It's justified, yes.
Diane, of course, you're on the hot subject of UNESCO and what it's up to in its indoctrination. What's the word? Indoctrination capacity.
Something like that. Yes. I mentioned last week that I would do some more investigation into the Digital Education Week that took place in Paris with UNESCO earlier this month. But first, I want to go back to 2023 when this report was published. This is called Guidance for Generative AI in Education and Research. So this was kind of one of the first things that we saw with UNESCO trying to look at how AI would be used in education. So if we look at what it said, and again, these are all very long reports. As is my typical habit, I have read these reports so that nobody else has to. And what this says, for just some quotes from a few of these reports that I'll go through, this says that it is going toward a human-centered approach to the use of generative AI. Quote, the guidance, which is this policy document, which is many, many pages, stresses the need for educational institutions to validate generative AI systems on their ethical and pedagogical appropriateness for education. It calls on the international community to reflect on their long-term implications for knowledge, teaching, learning, and assessment. So this was 2023. These tools, the educational tools, were just starting to come out. So then we come into 2025, where they've obviously been doing a lot of work for the past 2 years. This is the event, again, that I mentioned last week, Digital Learning Week 2025, which was called AI and the Future of Education, Disruptions, Dilemmas, and Directions. So if we just take a little bit from the synopsis of this Digital Learning Week, that is from what I just shared in the slide, it says that this is charting pathways for equitable. So again, there's that word equity, which is not the same as equality, of course, ethical and human-driven AI integration in education, ensuring technology serves as a force for inclusive progress. So there's that word inclusive. Once again, we see these words over and over again as when we look at globalist language around education, which of course ties to Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. So if we go on from there, I want to just talk a little bit about the opening session. So this is an AI generated image of this lady here. Her name is Stefania Giannini. She is the Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO. When she opened the conference on the 2nd of September, it was live streamed and it's now available on YouTube if you want to watch the whole thing. She starts with this sort of AI image of herself with her voice in the background, and it's sort of opening up and saying AI has become a new actor and it's the future of education, it's disruptive. And then suddenly, by somehow, some sort of miracle, Stefania herself, the actual person, walks out on the stage. So how about that? That was surprising. She makes a joke about how that AI Stefania was really the real Stefania, and she was just the fake one, the real one. So there's our inversion of language once again. And she goes on to give the speech about talking about the use of AI in education. So I just want to read a little bit of what is essentially the transcript from part of this talk. And she says, for example, let's meet a student. Cristiano is a secondary school student in Ghana. His school uses Rory, which is an AI tutor on WhatsApp. And Cristiano can ask questions at any time in his only language, which is a very important, not obvious point. And for the first time, we can say a student has something like a private tutor in his pocket. This is a revolution, really. Now, move to Princeton and meet Professor Bernard. He is a colleague teaching history of science. He actually asked his students to use AI on a test. And the system can analyze arguments, connect different ideas, all the dots through history and society, and also engage in what I would define as a Socratic dialogue interaction with the students. He described this experience, quoting his words, exhilarating, terrifying, even sublime. So she goes on to give these examples and talks about how AI is this major disruptor in education and what it's going to do. And so it raises a lot of questions, which I will continue to investigate. The obvious one, first of all, for me, is what are teachers for? What is the point of the teacher if AI is going to be in the student's pocket, or professors are asking students to use AI to actually do their exams? Well, there's a couple of ideas about this. One is that, and I experienced this myself before I left the education sector, is that the idea is that AI is apparently going to take over the easy stuff. So teachers teaching facts, for example, is going to be taken over by AI to allow teachers to do, and this is actually in some of the policy documents that I've got coming up next. If we look at these next very long policy documents that were published just this year, AI and the Future of Education, Disruptions, Dilemmas, and Directions. So this is a very long book with several chapters written by different people. What does this say in it? It says, well, for example, shaping the use of AI in education through collective dialogue. So in the introduction, it says that it explores the philosophical, ethical, and pedagogical dilemmas posed by disruptive influence of AI in education, bringing together insights from global thinkers, leaders, and change makers. The collection challenges assumptions, surfaces frictions, provokes contestation, and sparks audacious new visions for equitable, there's that word again, equitable, human-machine co-creation. So now we're starting to see humans and machines working together. This is not a teacher and a student. This is not students working together. This is machine and people working together for equitable co-creation, creating together with machines. So what does that sound like? Does that sound like transhumanism potentially? We can leave it there with that topic. But what it does say is that teachers are going to be used for human development, relating to students. This involves, of course, the topic of social emotional learning, which needs to be a few other segments I think I will need to do in the future. But essentially, social emotional learning is one of the things that we are fighting against in curriculums across the West, which involves these 5 main points: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So now teachers are taking over the things that really parents should probably be doing and not necessarily being left up to the schools. They also put one other document that they produced for the result of this conference or before this conference is called AI in Education, Protecting the Rights of Learners. This says that they are safeguarding the right to education in the digital era. Quote, "The rapid digitalization of education, accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic," so there's that again, "and the development of generative artificial intelligence is reshaping education and learning. These advancements also come with challenges, including the risks of exacerbating existing inequalities, privacy and safety concerns, and emerging issues relating to ethics, governance, and," there's that word again, "equity. This report emphasizes that all efforts must prioritize a human-centered and rights-based use of digital technology to benefit all learners." Now, what I will say about the idea of right to education, on the surface, of course, that sounds fabulous. Of course, we want children to have whatever education they need. But when we look at things like the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, it basically gives children, it does give children the same rights as adults, which could then lead to things like consent to viewing inappropriate content, looking at the sexualization of children, potentially, child abuse, sexual child abuse, and that opens it up because children have the same right to do whatever adults do according to this particular piece of documentation. So we need to continue to look at this.
Diane, thank you very much. And we got a little bit of amusement to end on.
Thankfully, I think we need it today. This was an article that was in BBC Earth. It was published on the 5th of September. And I put this on my Facebook page a few days ago, and it's created quite a bit of discussion from some of the UK column audience that follow me on Facebook. The article is titled, "How Eating Insects Became a Conspiracy Theory." And so the headline underneath that, sort of the subheadline, secondary headline says, "Insect protein is healthy and sustainable, but it is now also at the center of a far-reaching conspiracy theory." So if they're saying on the one hand, it's healthy and sustainable, but it's also part of a conspiracy theory, which is the case. And what's really interesting about this article, it's quite long, and I would encourage people to look at it themselves because there's too much that we can't discuss here in our time left. But it does talk about the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, which they claim in the article was an effort to reduce global inequality and advance environmental initiatives during the COVID-19 pandemic. So whatever they were doing while we were locked up in our houses. But to conspiracy theorists, they say it was proof that they were trying to use the pandemic as a way to reorganize society, according to the ADL's Center on Extremism. And it goes on to say that the WF did, in fact, publish an article saying that insects are more sustainable than meat, both in terms of tackling climate change and food insecurity. And it goes on to explain from Professor Stephen Lewandowski from the University of Bristol how to fight conspiracy theories. And I've read a lot by him. He's a professor of cognitive science. And what he said was the advice to people is that you have to keep pushing your family. So he said, quote, "You're not going to be successful if you say, 'Uncle Bruce, you're crazy. Don't believe this utter nonsense.' But instead, you can ask, 'What function do your beliefs serve? And why are you believing this?'" And he says it's not the kind of thing that you can do over a single dinner conversation, apparently. So I think some people might have some work out for them if they have an Uncle Bruce who is a conspiracy theorist. So there's some tips for you.
Okay. Joanne, thank you very much for that. We're going to leave our viewers today with a lovely image which you took, countryside into the far, far distance. Just a quick description, Diane.
Yeah, this is Hartside Pass, sort of up here in the north of England. I didn't take this photo, but I took one very similar to it. But the weather was terrible when I was up there yesterday. But it's up over 1,900 feet. You can see the Lake District. You can see the Solway Firth. You can maybe see south of Scotland. And it's very high and very beautiful. And yesterday was very cold and windy. But I just want to say a reminder to our viewers to get out there and enjoy nature. And just remember that the world is out there for you to explore and enjoy, and not to get yourself too caught up into all of this, because it's best for all of us if we have a little bit of a break now and then.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Diane. Thank you also, Ben. And I'll just end by saying that if you're one of the, we'll say, the million people who turned up in London to demonstrate about things you're concerned about, what's happening to your country, well done, and a special well done if you were there and enjoyed a social day with people in a well-behaved way. And I'm sure that was 99.99% of those present. So we'll end on that positive note. For members of UK Column, we'll be back for UK Column Extra in a few moments. For everybody else that's joined us for the news, thank you so much. Share our material, and we'll be back with another news on Wednesday at 1. See you then. Bye-bye.